So before we get into the whole file upload stuff, I just want to mention I've also threw up a little tip here. Okay, one of the things that with Azure that we talked about last term is the fact that apparently you only get one free database per region, right? Well, one reason this is useful is it helps get around that limitation. I mean, you can pick a different region, but you're going to run out okay, for different applications eventually, right? There's an easy trick, okay? You remember what namespaces are for. Well, it's the same idea in SQL Server with a schema. What is the default schema? You learned this right back in your first database fundamentals course, and we've touched on it again since. If you create a table or a view or a stored procedure or anything else in SQL Server, what's the default schema that is used? Yes? DBO. DBO, right, database owner, okay? Now you can optionally, as you do those creates, you can actually specify schemas as well. The idea of schema is to kind of collect tables together, okay, that are kind of related to each other. The other thing schemas do, they allow tables with the same name to exist in the same database, as long as they're in different schemas. Woo, wow. So if we take advantage of schemas, then we could use one database up in Azure and actually use it for multiple applications, so long as we have a different schema for each one. So here's a bit of a tip to allow that, okay? Right in our on-model creating, okay, where we override that in our DB context itself, you can just put this one little line of code, okay? Remember we use the model builder for different things, like removing those conventions we don't want and so on. So we can just say model builder has default schema and pass a name. Then all the tables that are created in relation to this DB context will have that exact same schema, right? So it's an easy way to store multiple tables without them conflicting and bumping into each other, right? So you can have two employee tables with different apps and have still both of them named employees, right? Or employee, singular. Exactly. Okay, so I decided to share that little tip with you I threw up in here. Also just to point out, there's some additional resources. Okay, one of the challenges that has come up, some people need to get SQL Server installed locally or MySQL, and they're having some issues, so Marcia threw this one up. I also threw up this little folder here on mapping and routing APIs. Ooh, that might be of interest, right? You have two main choices out there in the world for free information about routes and maps and so on. Google and Microsoft. Microsoft, of course, being Bing, right? Bing Maps. I'm not going to try to sell you on one or the other. Both work. You can get free keys for both, and away you go, right? So links here on how to use Google Maps. In particular, this link takes you right to the developer guide where you can get distance matrix information and so on. You can sign up, get a free key. Gives you a limited amount of calls you can make and so on and so forth. Just to mention though, that Bing has the same kind of thing, right? So there's a whole distance matrix calculation UI that you can, basically send requests up, find out whether it's walking or driving or taking public transit, how long it should take to get from A to B and so on and so forth. The other thing that's kind of good about the Microsoft one is there is an actual Bing Maps REST toolkit for .NET. So a simple NuGet package, install package, right? And it gives you easy commands. You just call this built-in command that comes along with the NuGet package to say, calculate the distance for me between A and B, right? So it's up to you if you want. There's good documentation along with the toolkit itself, okay? And you don't really need to get the code from here. You can just install the NuGet package, right, inside your actual application. So it's just an alternate approach. If you're going to take advantage of that, I mentioned, you have to go get an API key. You need a key so that it authenticates and allows you to make these requests. So sign up for a basic binmap key. Follow the link there. Once you have the key, guess what? I've actually been in touch with Microsoft about educational accounts. And what they've told me is if I send them an email, when you register, you'll get an account ID, and you'll also, of course, get the key once you get your basic key set up. Send me that information. I will forward it to Microsoft, and they will convert your basic key into an educational key, which basically gives you the next tier up, okay, for free, right? Without you having to worry about getting dinged for going over your limit on how many requests and them wanting to bill you and things like that, right? So why not, right? So if you want to play around with it, feel free. Technically, probably only one person per team in this group really needs to worry about it. but you know, everybody can, and there's no limit as far as I know. So they just said email as many students as you want. So just get me this information, I'll forward on to my contact person there, and they'll get you set up with an educational account for Bing Maps. All right, so any questions about that, you can follow up with me later, but we do have some stuff to go through, so if it's okay, I'm going to carry on. Okay, so getting back to our learning moments. I'll maybe stop and start the video just so it is in segments a little bit.